We're going to start with our question of the day. Which new offensive lineman will have the biggest impact in Cincinnati? Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, or Lael Collins?
I mean, that's just like, it's a great choice. Like going to the ice cream parlor and having, all the flavors set out in front of you. You just can't choose which one is most delicious. When people have asked me this so far, I've leaned toward Lael Collins at right tackle, because right tackle is the bigger, more important position of the three. He has the sort of highest ceiling of the three. When he's healthy and ready to go, he's a real difference maker. All three, though, are obviously significant upgrades, and given the way the middle of the line was collapsing in, certainly in the later parts of the season and in the playoffs on Joe Burrow, you could certainly make a case for Karras or Kappa. But I would go with stick with Collins, but you could definitely make a case that the center position has been, all three positions have been kind of a wasteland, right guard, center, and right tackle. I guess Richie Braham is the last time they had a center really, even top-notch quality, or not even talking all pro level, but just a guy you can rely upon week in and week out. Certainly we're hoping that's what the Bengals are getting in Karras. He has the lineage. He has the Super Bowl rings to prove it. Nothing but raves about him so far from camp, about his professionalism and the way he brings it every practice, every play of every practice. And Kappa, of course, is a guy who also has great button lines and looks like he's going to fit the bill for what they need at right guard, which is also just a horrible empty vacuum on that Bengal line for some time now. So all three are going to be important. I'll lean Collins for now, but you could talk me out of it at some point as the season approaches, and we'll see who stays healthiest. Really is what's going to make the big difference.
And I mean, the offensive line is the best reason to believe that the Bengals are going to be better this year, certainly. The story about the Bengals, and we talk about this in the chapter in the book, is that by our numbers, at least, they really were an average team during the regular season. And then they went on the great run in the playoffs. I mean, not just close wins, but playing well in the playoffs. So overall, we have them improving from where they were in DVOA last year. But the idea is that it won't look as good because they won't have as much luck in close games and the schedule is harder. And I'll point out, by the way, I mean, they're only slightly above average, which I know that's shocking for a team that's coming off a Super Bowl appearance, but they're only slightly above average of the projections. If you update the projections to say that Deshaun Watson will be back in week 7, the Bengals go from the 6th hardest schedule in the league to the number 1 hardest schedule in the league, because they would have to play Deshaun Watson twice.
It's a little bit in flux right now because of that, because all those division games are later in the schedule for the Bengals.
The one thing you can lean on is the fact that if basically the lone team that Baker Mayfield was good against was Cincinnati. So, I'm still taking the wait-and-see approach on Deshaun Watson. He can't play any better than Baker did against the Bengals, for God's sakes. I mean, obviously he's the much, much better player, but, that's me whistling past the graveyard a little bit, but I'll take it for now.
I think that's part of it, like what Aaron was talking about last year, about that sort of average, slightly above average, maybe Bengals team for most of the year. Yeah, I remember games against the Browns, where you kind of march down the field. And that was one march down the field, pick 6 the other way. That was this Bengals-Browns game. And all these other
99 yards, Denzel Ward, absolutely.
Yeah. And all these things that would happen that would indicate that, those of us watching the Bengals October, November, like, okay, Burrow's good, Chase is amazing. They're not done yet. They're not done cooking yet. And that was the impression we got from most of last year.
I was going to say they did improve in the second half of the season. Usually that kind of stuff doesn't tend to carry over, but there is a good argument that when you're talking about young players getting in sync, it does, and especially the offense improved. Like they were 23rd in DVOA through week 9, then weeks 11 to 17, they were 6th.
And we point out in the book, there's a lot of different factors there. Partially, DVOA doesn't love the way the Bengals played for various little detailed reasons. Didn't factor in the penalties and the big plays. The boomer bust style is not, something that DVOA loves. And also, I don't think there's any doubt about it that Joe Burrow himself took somewhere up to half the season to really get back to being what Joe Burrow was when he was coming out of college originally after that knee injury. And, he was out there, he was playing decent at worst football, but he wasn't the same player until the comfort really got back to where it was, and you could see the difference. It was pretty noticeable for anybody who watched him all season. So that was a big part of it too. And every stat you can take with a grain of salt. Some stats worshipped Burrow and the Bengals, and those were a little bit over the top too. They didn't necessarily factor in sacks and things like that. So, if you have to always put the recipe together with all these stats and you get a much more accurate portrayal of the team. I don't think anybody who was watching the Bengals, including myself, in certainly October or November, imagined them as a Super Bowl team by any stretch. We were just hoping to make the playoffs, and magic carpet rides happen, and that's what the Bengals went on. They definitely were the lad in January of this past year.
I would point out one of the reasons why our projections are always so conservative is that they price in the possibility of injuries by being built on all teams in the past, including teams where a number of stars got injured and the team collapsed, as a possibility, right? In the range of possibilities. Right. Burrow, obviously, you lose your quarterback, that'd be terrible. But you look at the rest of the offense also, there's not a lot of depth here. Like, they are really dependent on those three wide receivers. Right. If one of those three guys, Chase, Higgins, or Boyd, were to get injured, there is like nothing behind them.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big talking point all really since the season ended. Chase was the first round pick, I think, since 2013, 2015. I can't remember the date now, but he was the first one to make it through the entire season unscathed in Cincinnati. So, everybody took that as like, well, okay, this is a special season. The Bengals' first round pick actually played the entire way. Amazing. And, the fact that he was so good was just a cherry on top. But you're right. The fact that, Higgins and Chase together are such a devastating combo, and then you can go with Boyd reliable underneath. It's hard to match that top three, but in most cases, when you have that kind of front line, excellence, what's behind it is often not nearly the case. They've had a couple of guys play decently in camp. They're very high on Kwame Lassiter, who's a rookie undrafted free agent, but, let's be real. This time of year, every team talks up guys like that. Yeah. So, right now, you're looking at Michael Thomas, who's been around the league a while and is a guy they like, but is not really a difference maker. And Stanley Morgan, who they play a lot, but is a blocking wide receiver. He's almost like a tight end in a wide receiver's jersey number. So they have those two guys who are going to fill in, and they'll play. And the idea is that Burrow will make them into something a little bit better, maybe than their natural talent. But obviously, as you point out, teams built around the passing game, and they're built around star wide receivers. And if any one, or God forbid, multiple ones go down for any length of time, they're screwed. But you can say that about a lot of teams in a lot of positions. Yeah. So
but there's no one here like Isaiah McKenzie for the Bills or Brashad Perriman and now Julio Jones for the Buccaneers, where the fourth and fifth guys are have some history, right?
Most teams you can say, well, yeah, if they lose their best offensive non-quarterback player, they're in trouble. But there's these other paths to greatness. You can take Stephon Diggs away from the Bills and say, oh, this team can win with defense, and they can win with Josh Allen's legs, and McKenzie can step up. And you can do that with a lot of the other contenders. If you take Jamar Chase out of the equation for the Bengals, you have an unbelievably ordinary team that you can't picture doing more than just sort of hanging around.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think they think that internally. I mean, I think they're aware of that, and they've gone heavily on the defense for just that reason to think to themselves, all right, yes, we are. And they've historically always been built around passing combinations that are elite, but we have to find a way to win when it's not working. And in the playoffs, that's what they did. They won those playoff games, not particularly with
the defense really stepped it up in the playoffs. The defense was much better.
Special teams, won those games for them. And I think, is it going to be a case where that's going to be their new identity? No question. No, definitely not. But when it's not working, or if Chase, has to go and miss a game or two, obviously a devastating injury is another conversation. But if, he's only out for a week or two, I mean, T. Higgins missed a couple weeks last year. It wasn't, completely detrimental to the offense. So they can find ways to win in other ways if the defense continues the upward trajectory they've been on. We'll see if that actually happens. And obviously with the offensive line improvements, maybe the running game takes another step forward. I think they're certainly aware of the idea that just being a team based completely around Burrow to Chase, Burrow to Higgins, and if they're not open, Burrow to Boyd, is not sustainable. So hopefully they'll find a little bit more diversity to that attack.
Yeah, the defense is interesting to talk about because it got talked up a lot in the playoffs. And they did. I mean, they were a top 10 defense in the playoffs, but that's top 10 defense out of 14 teams, not out of 32 teams, right? in the playoffs, there was a lot of overstatement of how good the Bengals defense was,
Yes.
and particularly the pass rush, which was a little bit below average in pretty much every stat. They were 25th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. They were 19th in adjusted sack rate. They were 22nd in pressure rate from SIS. And it's basically the same guys this year, except for the addition of Joseph Osai, who is a really good prospect who was injured for his rookie year and does have a lot of promise. And is Jesse Bates practicing, or is he holding out with the franchise tag?
At the moment, he's not. It's just a guaranteed dollars chasm that they're not willing to cross, and they're spooked by the fact that they're going to have to pay Burrow and Chase and Higgins relatively soon down that line.
And they did draft a safety in the first round,
And
so
they
they
drafted a safety.
but they still need to get this year out of Bates.
The entirety of football, you always talk about how do you team build? You draft a guy, develop him. He's one of your own. He becomes a all-pro level player, and you keep him for as long as he's valuable. And that's sort of, it makes no sense that you would get rid of him in his prime like this. He has been a little up and down over the years. It's not like he's stepped in and has been, top of the line safety every game, every year. But he definitely played his best down the stretch, and in the playoffs, he was fantastic. That's what you want from guys, right? They play their best in big games, and he's finally kind of mastered the Anarumo scheme that you alluded to earlier. Aaron, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me that they would think that anybody really is going to step in, but Dax Hill's a good prospect. I'm sure he can play, and he'll play multiple positions. There's no reason why Bates and Hill couldn't play together, but we'll see how it plays out. I just think they've sort of looked around the landscape and said, all right, well, we're not going to be able to give Jesse what his guaranteed dollars or agents are demanding, and they're set to move on after this year. But he has to play this year. All indications are that he will. He's not going to leave on the table and just sit out. That doesn't seem the kind of guy he is. It doesn't make prudent financial sense. Players virtually never do that. So he should play, and he'll be the same Jesse Bates that he always has been for lack of any evidence otherwise.
If Watson is playing, who's better right now, the Bengals or the Browns?
Well, I would still say that the Browns have a better overall roster than the Bengals, so I wouldn't necessarily lean and say the Bengals are better just because of I might be a fan, but I'm a realistic fan. If anything, I go, too conservative. I don't ever really believe in the team until they show it to me. I just don't like other people knocking them, But I would say if Watson plays, the Browns are top to bottom better than them. Doesn't mean they'll sweep them or anything.
No. I mean, the best, most likely result would be 1-1. But I'm just saying, in general, if Watson were to play the whole season.
If he's playing the whole season,
who would be favored to have the better record? The Browns.
Yeah, the Browns would be, and that would be proper. They should be favored to have more wins than the Bengals in that circumstance.
What do you think, Mike?
I'm going to lean Bengals because of the receiving core. The receiving core is still significantly better, even with Amari in there. There's not much behind him, and with the rebuilt Bengals line, I'm still going to lean Bengals, but it'll be extremely close.
It's interesting because the Browns are better on the offensive line. They have the better running game. They have the better defense. They have certainly more stars on defense. But, and I don't know right now, since we haven't seen Watson play for a year, I don't know who I would take between.
It's really, it's pure hypothetical at this point.
That's it.
Not as a
arrow that I saw in the playoffs versus a guy who's disappeared for 2 years. That's hard to.
Yeah.
Right. But the wide receiver is definitely a big difference. There's a huge difference between having T. Higgins as your number 2 and having Donovan Peoples-Jones as your number 2.
It's caught. First down into the secondary.